Welcome to another episode of DeFi Expectations. Today we have Farmer Brown on, who wants to talk to us about Dracula Protocol, the fourth industrial revolution, and maybe some other subjects. How are you doing today, Farmer Brown?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Excited to pick your ear and talk about crypto other than to other internet frogs. So it'll be good to break that barrier.
I know, three cartoons. Nice.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, hold on. We're definitely still three cartoons.
So yeah, basically, I guess kind of introduce yourself real quick. One of the questions I had was basically to start off, we're going to be talking a lot about Dracula Protocol today. So what is your involvement specifically in that?
Okay. So a little bit of background on me, I guess. It might make a little more sense going into how I got involved with Dracula Protocol. So I got into crypto a few years ago. And pretty much the gateway drug for me was Chainlink. As you can see here, it's in my bio. And really what it kind of showed me is that there's this whole nother layer to, crypto other than what I used to think about as in just, this quick get rich scheme. And how there's an actual fundamental layer behind the technology there. So once I dug into Chainlink a bit more, and thus DeFi, I realized that this was an emerging niche. I'm just graduating college right now, so I was looking for like a way to kind of get a quick start on my career. And I kind of stumbled upon Dracula Protocol as I was researching different DeFi projects earlier in the space. I think this was last October now, which is like an eternity in DeFi.
Yeah.
So it's like weird to even talk about it. But I think I stumbled upon it and I really like the concept of this kind of meta yield aggregator where, you have at least an issue back then is you're really stuck with all these different governance tokens that you may or may not want. And how to decide and how to automate which ones you actually sell. And back in October, gas prices were, kind of an issue. It was getting a little expensive. But it's nothing like it is today. I don't know when the last time you guys used Ethereum was, but
5 minutes ago.
I know. Maybe a couple days ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm on like every couple of days now, just because it's miserable. So
yes, it is. When I try to talk to other people about it, I'm like, you got to just kind of get past the fact that everything you do that's normally free is extremely expensive.
Yeah, it's so bad because I start paying attention to like the dollar value instead of the ETH value. And it's like, man, like $100, like I can think of so many other things I'd rather pay $100 for than to, ape into this whatever project. So
I know I used to, a little while ago, one of the records I wanted to buy from my favorite band was like $20 on Amazon. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that right now. And now I'm just like, yeah, $1,000 for a cat pixel. I'm like, I guess so.
I guess it's pretty cool.
What was funny to me is like, I remember when I was first introducing like DeFi to Robin, getting him kind of his start in the scene and everything. And I remember that was your first primary complaint. You said the gas fees are so expensive to do anything. And I feel like that was the rub that kept you from getting in kind of before Christmas. You were a little unsure. I was still down at that point. I was like, oh, I'm down $2,000. Gas prices are ridiculous. But trust me, man, it's the future of finance. And probably at that point, I looked like I just had this tinfoil hat on. I don't know about this guy. Maybe he's jumped the shark. Maybe he doesn't know what's going on anymore. But we started talking more. And now it's like you're so involved in it. It's something you're doing all the time, right, Robin? You believe in it. And you're like, I get why the gas fees are what they are, but they're so ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a hard thing for me to get past when I was doing it, because it's like you think about something like PayPal and you're like, okay, I can do that for like nothing. I can send something for free on Venmo. I can send something for free with Zelle. So it's like, it's a really hard thing to get past when you're trying to explain to somebody every single step you take to do something is going to cost, like, on the easy side $30 and on the expensive side close to 100.
Yeah.
And you might have to do something like 4 different times to get something where you want it. So
Yeah, absolutely. You said, Farmer Brown, that you initially had taken an interest in Link, which is funny because when I was still trading on Coinbase and I thought that I was super innovative for doing that, I remember first hearing about Link and I just knew that it was associated with smart contracts, but didn't really know what a smart contract did or what made Link so valuable. And now you're seeing how Link is really the make or break difference between whether or not a lot of these projects end up getting like flash loan attacks or other types of exploits. So what kind of brought you into Link first before Dracula? I guess go ahead and continue that story.
Yeah, actually, it was interesting because I think I had a different experience than most people would. I was actually in an internship in San Francisco. I think it was summer of 2019, which again sounds like an eternity ago, but I had been exploring the city and there was this local event that was like some Ethereum meetup. And at the time, I had absolutely no idea. Like I said, it was just like a get rich quick scheme in my head. But it was at this part of town that I really wasn't too familiar with. So I thought, why not? I'll make like a trip out of it, maybe meet some people, just see what it's about. And it ended up being mostly a Chainlink kind of conference where Sergey Nazarov went up and talked about, I guess, what Chainlink was and what they were trying to do. And it seemed like so abstract and like this whole niche of tech and innovation that was just flying completely under the radar. And I had actually talked to, I feel like most people don't know this, but Dan Kochis is the head of business development for Chainlink. And I got a chance to like talk to him a bit. We ended up grabbing a drink and it was really just kind of like the people, and he drew the attention to Sergey the most. And the more I looked into this guy and kind of the lore behind Chainlink, and all these, kind of rumor mill, like Sergey might be Satoshi, or all these kind of like interesting things that made me realize there's just so much more than meets the eye. And I'm not necessarily a huge believer of the rumors or whatnot, but as you've come to see, like right here, it's become a fundamental infrastructure of smart contracts and crypto in general. So it was kind of like this weird mix of the kind of fun anarchist digging down the rabbit hole of crypto meets this legitimate use case that I could genuinely see taking over most of the world, like the internet did in the 90s or something like that. So
Yeah, it's definitely on my list of things I check off. It's like, is Chainlink being used as the Oracle? That's definitely one of the things that I ask when I'm looking at a new project. Shared Stake was one I recently took a look at, and I guess that they are partnering with Chainlink for their Oracle, and that was something that that definitely boosted my confidence in them.
Yeah, it's just
So
like
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's I'd say analogous to a project getting an audit. I mean, it just kind of shows this nod to security that, it might not make a difference. It may, or, it doesn't seem like a huge issue, but it's kind of an alignment with, a ethos of security first. We're not going to risk user funds. And it kind of just shows me that they know what they're doing. But again, Chainlink is currently limited. So it's not like an end all be all whenever a project doesn't use it. It's just kind of like, like what's their argument,
Yeah,
So but it's been
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, and then what brought you to Dracula Protocol? How did you kind of discover them?
So it was actually so I've held mostly Link, and the emergence of DeFi and yield farming definitely took, my interest. I think it's changed the entire landscape of crypto. Like we were talking about, where us three, presumably sane people are spending hundreds of dollars to buy digital kittens to farm some weird token that may or may not have value. Um, but it captured my attention because they were offering um, this this idea of being able to stake liquidity tokens. I think it was SushiSwap at the time, and it would kind of do this automating, harvesting, and at that point in time, it was meant to go to market buy the Dracula token, which I thought the tokenomics were actually quite impressive at that point. It didn't end up working out due to just high emissions, as you've seen with projects when whales get involved too early. They can dump the token, shake investor confidence, and that was the story with Dracula early on. And we're seeing this kind of shift for our V2, whereas the Dracula tokens more or less kind of a governance, profit sharing type, utility, as opposed to this, hey, we'll give you this token, thanks for farming with us, whatever. So hopefully it's a point of maturity where we can go forward and follow something like Yearn's path, or more mature aggregators in the space that have kind of paved the way.
Interesting, because you say that it sounds like they had a rockier start. Excuse me, in the beginning. I actually did hold Dracula at one point because I discovered them somewhere in crypto Twitter land. Somebody brought them up. And I think I was just still experimenting with Uniswap at that time and realizing what tokens I could buy. And I think at that point, I was still learning how to evaluate projects. And I just thought, oh, maybe I'll just buy a bunch of like low cap tokens and just see, if they go up, why not? And I think I spent like $10 on Dracula Protocol and I got like 30 tokens or something like that. And I watched it for a while. And then I got really OCD and I was like, oh, this is too much for me to watch. And I condensed them out of my portfolio and they didn't really do very much. And at that time, of course, the community was different. I remember just being on the Telegram and it was a lot of people like, when moon, this project's going down. It was both ends of the bipolar extremes, of how we respond to the market. So I guess the community just didn't get me really involved, but it seemed like an interesting concept because they're all about vampire attacks, right? Or is that kind of the mechanism, or what is their mechanism exactly? Where do they provide value in the DeFi ecosystem?
So yeah, that's a funny thing to bring up, is actually a lot of the terminology is kind of around this, vampire concept.
That's actually one of my questions I wanted to ask you about, because I think like a lot of the terminology you guys have like created is a lot of fun. And yeah, I think it would also, it's a little bit like a little more confusing because it's not the same terminology as a lot of other places. So yeah, if you could kind of elaborate on that, that'd probably be really helpful for everyone.
Yeah. I believe me, like I'm in the Telegram almost daily, along with my other mod who's great, but answering these types of questions. So I guess we'll start with victims. So really what a victim is to Dracula Protocol is an underlying platform. Think SushiSwap, think Badger, think some sort of platform that you can deposit your tokens or liquidity provider tokens in, and they give you their own governance token as a reward. So Sushi or Badger. What we aim to do, especially with V2, is that for our victims, we will kind of adapt to them. And then instead of staking through them directly, you'll stake through us, Dracula Protocol. And then we will go ahead and stake them into Sushi or Badger. And every so often, when the rewards accrue for all of these Dracula stakers, which is known as the drain, we will drain this kind of pool of accrued rewards, sell them into Ether, and then deposit them into a yield earning strategy that keeps you only exposed to ETH. So V1 doesn't have this same capability where that drain is sent into ETH and put in its own strategy. Right now, it's just sold into ETH and then used to market by DRC. And we're hoping with this kind of shift, we'll hopefully keep people who are more or less hesitant in being fully exposed to altcoins, especially as the bull market heats up. You go on crypto Twitter, everyone's calling the top every other week. Hopefully appealing to the DeFi user that might be fine being exposed to the underlying, platform token like Sushi and ETH, like a Sushi ETH pool, but selling the Sushi earned for Ether to kind of keep, that exposure into more large caps as opposed to, the small moon bags.
And that helps people save on gas fees, which right now are actually the last day or so, I've noticed I saw it dip into the 80s at one point, which I was pretty excited about. I'm just like, oh shit, it's back below 100. Time to start doing it.
Stop everything. Yeah, and then everyone else does the exact same thing. It's at 200 before you know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, gas is a huge thing that we're trying to address as well, especially because everyone's rewards are accrued in this master vampire contract. So essentially what we do is collect and sell, and we'll reinvest all without any gas fees to the user themselves, or at least they're crowdfunded. So a portion of each drain, which is the rewards that you earn, will be kept in ETH to fund the next drain, if that makes sense.
There was something you explained about the project that actually made the value click to me a little better than it has before. And maybe you can elaborate on this a bit. But one of the things that I struggle with is I'm not a very good trader. And so I just don't. Pretty much if I believe in a project, I'm buying and holding. But, if I were anything, I'd say I'm an ETH maximalist. I believe in accumulating more ETH, and pretty much anything I'm doing in the space with any projects, the end goal is me accumulating more ETH. Mm-hmm. So it seems like logistically, if the farming mechanism here is to basically try to cash the rewards out for ETH periodically, it seems like that would be beneficial to a person who that's the ultimate goal of them using these different protocols. Is that a correct way of understanding it, or is there a better way to understand it?
No, that's spot on. It's essentially just a way to kind of automate, your accumulation of Ether. And, we might expand that to allow stable coins as well, but we thought we aligned a lot more, in the DeFi space with, Ether, because it's really at the foundational level of most of DeFi. And I say that with an asterisk because you see all this cross-chain, DeFi platforms emerging, but essentially, yeah, we wanted to give a way where if you did want to take profits or DCA into Ether, you don't have to be a whale to actually make it worth the gas costs.
Yeah.
So by having this way to crowdfund gas, kind of allowing you to stay, exposed to whatever underlying pool. So let's say you're huge into, like me, like Link and ETH. You deposit into the Sushi Swap LP, but then you'd be able to stake through us, and it would essentially accumulate more ETH instead of Sushi.
Gotcha.
Let's see. So at this point, what is your particular role at Dracula? How many people do you have involved in the team, essentially? I guess in your main team.
Yeah. So I think core team is our founder, Dio, who's in and out. He kind of, I guess, bankrolls most of it. Make sure that we have 2 core developers that work on the core contracts and also some victim contracts here and there. We have myself, and I kind of handle the partnership side. So you'll see we have a few upcoming partnerships I have to keep on the DL right now, but really just trying to get into this ecosystem of DeFi. And, at face value, it seems like we might be hurting the underlying platforms, which I'm not disagreeing with. But, how to mitigate this automatic selling of these, platforms tokens into maybe a more synergistic relationship. So working with our victim platforms and seeing, what we can work out. And then there's another moderator who handles, most of the Telegram, Discord, answering questions, which, it is a lot. I poke my head into the Telegrams. Like, I think you mentioned it, Fry, how you go into different small Telegrams and people are always asking like when moon and all this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a handful. And then we have one front end developer who's currently working on our V2 interface, which I'd love to show you right now, but I just don't think it's at the current status to be showing off. So,
And when you're talking about the interface, are you talking about like a new front facing web interface?
yes. So our V2 contracts will also have a new UI, which, takes a little more of a professional. Some of the feedback we got was like, the victim terminology and all this got a little cartoony. So we wanted to make sure it appealed to everyone, at least made sense without them having to ask.
Yeah, because that was going to be one of my other questions. I know, like, just in the time when Fry had showed me Sushi Swap originally to what it looks like now, just in these little times, which like what, 4 or 5 months, maybe everyone's kind of doing like facelifts and things like that because of the fact that this is emerging and changing so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So is there like, that's going to be a big thing as kind of like a facelift for the front end?
Yeah, especially tailored towards UX, because I think that's a big sticking point for DeFi right now. Especially any platform that you go into, I feel like we're used to it, right? I mean, we've been in it for at least a couple months, but recently I tried showing a couple of my friends, how to get into it, and just the things people like you and I kind of overlook, as simple as like, like what is my seed phrase? Like, is that the same thing as my wallet address or something like that? I think we have a long ways to come for DeFi. I mean, truly from a UX standpoint.
I think that's a hard thing too, because, and this is something me and Robin kind of went through too when I was getting him introduced, is it's like there's this huge barrier to entry, but once you've made the journey, you kind of don't want to look back. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the same kind of mentality of everybody in the scene, which is great, because in some light, we're all speaking the same language and we're focused on the things that matter most. But in another light, it's like, if you want to get this mass adopted, we can't continue being comfortable with, you have to visit 2 different websites to stake, and you have to go through 20 different transactions with these high gas fees. Mm-hmm. And and any kind of UX that doesn't really resemble, I guess, a bank account. If people are going to be putting real dollars into it, I guess that's kind of the experience a lot of them are looking for. And you get comfortable with it, because you forget that moment when you first sent your money to Yearn Finance, or when you first sent your money to Badger or to Harvest or to any of these projects. And, that first moment when you're not sure if you're going to get anything back out of it or not, but you just took that chance. Then you think of what that was like the very first time you set up a private wallet. It's these rites of passage you take, and we have to also pave the way for that to be easy for the next generation to really get the adoption. So I think that's great that they're doing all these improvements. One of my questions actually comes from exactly what you're talking about earlier with the terminology. You said, like, with the victims terminology, so on and so forth. What does Dracula offer as value in terms of partnerships to projects you work with? Is there something, or are they just victims, or is there something being offered that's why you're trying to get away from that terminology to maybe partner with more protocols that could, I don't know, increase the value? Or I don't know, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, because that, like, being in charge of partnerships was the absolute, you're dealing with a natural almost enemy. I come across, say, hey, I'm with Dracula Protocol. They're not going to like me off the bat, if they even know what we are, Yeah. So I think one of the first angles that I looked at was, okay, we are simply allowing, and this is to make, myself feel a little better about what we do, but we are essentially giving the power to, people that aren't whales, maybe the little guy, the average investor, to be able to freely choose what to do with their money. So appealing to that user going forward, saying, hey, like, these users will eventually most likely be looking to sell your token. It's just the reality. I mean, they're supposed to be valueless governance tokens, but we all know they're not. And enabling this for your average user might improve their user experience. They might be more likely to use you knowing that they don't have to, count in outrageous gas cost in the bottom line. And with that as a starting point, another way that I've tried to kind of maneuver this, and this is kind of a bigger issue in DeFi itself, is this idea of governance voting. So again, you go back to this average investor, the little guy, he can't claim and let alone vote, even though there are gasless voting options like Snapshot. You see there's a lot of different sticking points. So whether it's money, even just effort or incentives to vote on governance proposals, I'd say most DeFi platforms aren't happy with their engagement. So one of the angles that I've tried to take is saying, hey, like, if you allow us to let users stake through Dracula, you get the reality, we'll be selling your tokens. But what if we could hold somewhere between 2 to 5% of the tokens that originally would be sold and send them to our own treasury, and we will, kind of have this agreement that we'll participate in governance on behalf of our users. So helping these victims reach quorum, kind of get the voice out of these underlying platforms. And also Dracula would have exposure to the token now. So we're stakeholders in their environment. So that's been successful. We have one partner coming out that has agreed to, something along those lines. And I think once the word gets out that they've been willing to do it, I see absolutely no reason for our other victims not to, also come aboard. So
yeah, I see.
I really like that idea, actually, because the two of us were just speaking about something like this, where essentially, like, to cut down on gas fees, you basically have like your own little locked away section where you can all function internally. And then at one point you just go and make one singular transaction of that type. And that way you're not just spinning your wheels in a lot of ways and wasting a lot of money that's unnecessary to do.
Yeah,
I feel like there's an opportunity there to bridge a gap in understanding that's kind of present with a lot of, I guess, degen mentalities in DeFi. And I guess to kind of express what I mean by that is you take a look at sushi, you take a look at these different farming protocols where people were coming in, farming huge pools and just taking all their sushi and just selling it, right? Just dumping it. Back when sushi was like $1 or even less, but they were making so much money and just dumping the token because they didn't realize, what sushi would be worth today. So you think about all that value that was just returned. Sushi Swap's another great example because they've struggled a bit to get people to participate in their governance, right? So if you could present it almost as an opportunity, right? So a partnership with Dracula means that you get some of those tokens that are just dumped actually participating in a meaningful way in governance, but then you're also creating value for the users in that, hey, you're not sure how much of this to sell or how much to keep for governance. Maybe we can take some of that management out of it for you. And I don't know. I just see that there being some kind of value proposition there if you can create it as a way to make use of that lost value of people just dumping the tokens.
Yeah,
I see that as probably the greatest opportunity there.
right. And especially because I think it's just an issue that's not talked about, except amongst maybe the developer community. I mean, you find a lot of projects having trouble reaching quorum or actually getting any participation. I think it was Uniswap recently that was having their vote to enable the fee switch, which is essentially taking, I think it was like half of the liquidity providers fees that they get and giving it to uni holders. And from what I remember, there was almost no discussion around it. I mean, there were some votes, but the board was practically empty. And if we're really going to take DAOs seriously and DeFi itself, we have to, sit down and think, okay, yeah, we have liquidity because we're giving people free money, but how do we make them care about what we're actually doing and incentivizing them to hold? And honestly, I don't think anyone's found the perfect answer yet.
I think it's a very similar thing to, it seems like we're all US based, and I know we have a very low turnout when it comes to voting statistically in this country.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people are involved when it comes to countrywide per protocol, of course, but it could be just a lot of apathy. And it could be a lot of people really don't even know that that's an option, or know that, that's something that they should be doing with the tokens that they hold, that they may not even know they have the ability to do that.
Right.
Yeah. I
They
feel
might
like
just use another currency. It's like, just because you have $1 in your pocket doesn't mean that, you get to vote on anything in particular. You can't go to Congress and be like, hey, I have $1.
Right. At least not in front of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta have a couple more.
Yeah.
yeah,
A couple
I
more.
feel like Badger is one of those projects that does a really good job at like keeping its community involved with like governance decisions. But like that's another example. Like we get community members once in a while who feel like things just happen without them, and it's like, no, we have a Discord, we have a forum, we have everything extensively like voted on and discussed with the community. But sometimes just, if you're not in it full time, you can miss it. So there's definitely like a missing piece there to like getting people more empowered about voting, kind of dealing with also the issues of voter fatigue, which is like the other side of that problem. And just making people feel empowered to make like responsible decisions on the protocols that they're investing in.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an issue because, like I've said before, I think out of the communities I am involved in, I see that Secret and Badger have just like massive involved communities. And it's really cool, but at the same time, like I think the people who are really, really deeply involved are pretty much like, the development team and a lot of the team members, because they're the ones who are really dedicating a lot of time to this. The average person who may be invested in Badger or maybe invested in Secret probably is still working a standard job and is still doing other stuff with their time. They're not fully immersed in the DeFi space. So they might not have time to go vote. They might not have time to read every single proposal and watch every single video, conference that's happening like that. And I know a lot of the time when it comes to voting, just in general with stuff, I don't really feel like it's worth my time to vote if I don't even know what I'm voting for, It's like, why vote on anything in particular anyway if I have no idea what I'm even voting for? So I think that's a big issue. It's a big hurdle we need to get over in this kind of stuff too, because otherwise, essentially, you've got a very, very small group of people making all the decisions, which is something we're definitely trying to change about voting in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's and I think you touched upon it, but let's say we did have incentives for voting. It was a very cut and dry. Every vote gets you this much, token or something like that. Which would be the complete flip side. Everyone would be voting, but then you might have this issue on the complete flip side where you have people voting with absolutely zero thought into what they're voting on. They're just there for the yield. Which, if that happened, I'm pretty sure that would be the result. So you got to find this balance of, you want informed, incentivized voters, but you can't have it, too incentivized where everyone's voting, don't know what they're voting on, but you can't have it, also too restricted or unappealing where even users that might understand, kind of the proposals don't think it's worth the time. So
yeah, that's tough. It's always tough kind of like managing the unforeseen consequences of something that seems like a good idea at first.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that a million times plus with all sorts of different things.
Well, you have
Absolutely.
the possibility too for the solution to become worse than the problem. Like something I could imagine emerging from this is almost something like political parties, which God help us if we get those involved in DeFi. But imagine if there was organization created to help you manage your governance tokens. Oh, well, why don't you go ahead and read like our value proposition? And if it sounds like we're for the same things you're for, then you can allocate your governance tokens for us and we'll vote for you. I could
I
see that happening in the future.
it probably will. I mean, at face value, that sounds like it would solve the issue of quorum and, you know, getting people to vote. But shit, you got a whole nother problem, you know?
Yeah, you
That's,
can already imagine the problems with that.
yeah, I
And
mean,
you essentially get like one of the problems that we have in our state with the delegate process, which is absolutely horrific.
I would hate that to happen in crypto.
Yeah, it would be really, really disappointing. And that's I think something that everyone needs to be on guard for is the more that this grows, the more that, you know, apathy could be a thing, even more so than it is right now, because it becomes standardized.
Yeah, it's like we have all the people looking at the problem who created the problem. It's like, let's ask the Treasury Secretary what we should do with Bitcoin. Let's not ask all the people who fucked up the dollar what we should do with Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Right.
Like, let's just not do that.
Yeah, I think there will be solutions that emerge, and honestly, that what you just proposed, Fry, like the having a couple different platforms, you know, kind of you delegate it. I think Tezos has a delegation system where it's more or less, you know, not like political based,
Yeah.
but it'll be interesting, especially as the bull market heats up and as it slows down. I really think in a bear market situation, a lot of these platforms are going to have issue reaching quorum, which would be something really to take into account, because if you can't pass any proposals because all the tokens are sitting in dead wallets, I mean, you're at a standstill.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, without the proper incentives, that will happen. And might not seem like it now, but you know, 6 months ago, we couldn't have predicted where we'd be at today on April 5th. And the projects that have emerged, I mean, almost anything that's relevant is less than a year old.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. And yeah, no one's really talking about it.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating what comes out of it. It's just anytime something's automated to align with a set of values, I always worry about the political aspect of it. The idea of you know, this sounds great. It seems like this person has the right idea, but still, like the whole idea of DeFi is we're supposed to be our own masters, you know? But you have to accept that reality that for it to grow, for it to be mass adopted, we're going to have to bring in a lot of people who don't know what they're doing. And that means we're going to have to work really hard on educating them quickly so they can make those decisions themselves. But if they can't, and it becomes a big enough problem, then it becomes exactly what you talked about. Projects can't move forward because they don't meet quorum. Gosh, what was it like? Uniswap's first vote couldn't even meet quorum. I mean, imagine none of their votes could meet quorum. This great project just falls under the weight of its own ego because it can't pass any votes. Like that's not good. It's something we have to watch out for sure.
That would be the most Uniswap thing ever to happen too. No offense, but
no, I use them like almost daily, and yeah, I agree that they have their issues too.
Yeah, I do too. I still haven't, you know, I like to try to use 1inch, kind of be this impartial, you know, whatever has the best liquidity, but just force it out of it.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. Is I even use the 1-inch exchange on Uniswap all the time because I always heard that was the best rate, but I never got used to using 1-inch itself. So I tend to use that, but I've been trying to use 1-inch more. And they gave me like $800 the other day. I just signed on it randomly, forgot that I didn't even know they did a second airdrop, and they gave me $800. So I don't know what my problem is for not using them.
That only in DeFi. I think they gave it to everyone who hasn't used them. But
okay.
Yeah, which I guess it worked. I thought it'd be a horrible idea, but if you're using them now, I mean,
Yeah, I'm starting to for sure.
Damn, I didn't use them. Where's mine? Maybe I
exactly.
need to check into this again.
Yeah, didn't I tell you to check and you didn't have anything from them?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm very sure I haven't used them unless maybe through something with Zapper. I don't
I
know.
I
Maybe
think that like all the product protocols just don't like you, Robin. They just got your address and they've cut you out of it.
the only ones that qualify for scams.
It was funny. He's like telling me about these airdrops, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'll check it out. All right, I'm qualified for that one. I guess you're not, but thanks for telling me.
Like, I guess I'll keep my eye out for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most recent one was actually the SATO, I believe is what it was, right? That dropped technically this morning at 6 time anyways.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and then you warned me not to do that one after
I
the
started
fact.
seeing a bunch of stuff at like 2 in the morning when I was like just falling asleep. And I was like, yeah, better be careful about that one. It's looking pretty sketch.
Yeah, I was reading into that today. I think it was something to do with the transaction you had to approve.
Yeah, you had to do the signing through MetaMask. And yeah, everyone who knows a lot more about the complex coding side didn't seem to be too thrilled with it.
No, yeah. I don't know enough about it either, but I stayed away as well. Also,
Yeah.
like the website was just looked like they threw in a bunch of like buzzwords for DeFi.
Yeah, I know. When I even just like started repeating, I think I even commented to you or something like that when I was just like saying the name of the token in my head after a while. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, what did it stand for? It was super something.
Super algorithmic token. And I'm just like, yeah, that's like, super duper valuable asset token or something like that. It's just a step below that. And I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
Like $1 bajillion in our TVL. It's gonna be wonderful.
man,
Sounds super reliable.
you never get bored in DeFi. That's always something.
Yeah, it's very true. I know, like, as soon as I've gotten immersed, I'm just like, I don't want to do anything else anymore. I've been trying my very best to push off as much stuff as I have to some other people.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things I've discovered about DeFi is the thrill of getting hacked or getting exploited. And what I mean by that is like, it happened to me a couple times kind of by proxy, like just like, investing in a protocol and the pool gets hacked and maybe the token value goes down that you're investing in, but like the pool itself didn't. And I remember like I had bought some cover tokens and I thought I'm pretty safe. I'm not going to put these in a pool. I'm just going to hold them because I think cover is going to be valuable and this will be a safe investment. And then it was like when I heard about the exploit, as upset I was that I lost like my 4 cover tokens and the guy had minted like a quadrillion tokens and run off with all this money. I was just like, that's so awesome that he did that. Like that's terrible. But that's incredible that's how I got screwed out of my money. What a great story. Like, not that I walked behind like a store and got beat up and someone took my money. Like, that's not a story. Like, that's a story, what happened with cover.
Right.
And it's happening like every other day, all these bizarre exploits. And it's just like, it's a fascinating time, but you also realize that the enemies are incredibly intelligent too. And just the stuff that's being pulled off in the space, it's remarkable.
That kind of stuff was actually what kept me from investing in Bitcoin back in 2012 because I didn't really understand blockchain back then. My only thing was I knew that if you can write code, you can hack code. It's like it's with anything. It's if somebody can create it, somebody can destroy it at the top. And so not understanding the basically the way the blockchain works and having multiple parties that you would essentially have to corrupt at the same time, that prevented me from doing what I definitely should have done. And now that I understand it more, I get why it's a safer thing. And really it's the other projects themselves that are being hacked as opposed to the code of that particular blockchain. Looking back on that, I wish I had known more, but even when I started hearing about Ethereum like a year later, 2 years later after that, maybe, It was just like not really knowing what smart contracts were, and not really knowing what the difference was. As far as I was concerned, Ethereum was just another coin, you know.
Well, better late than never that you got in. I mean,
Exactly.
it's yeah. I always wonder who is that person that figured out how to mint a quadrillion fucking cover tokens. Like, who do I walk by them like on the street? Like, where is this person? I mean, who figures that out? It's insane. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
It's probably like your Uber Eats driver or something.
Exactly what I'm figuring. You know, just
like just doing nothing, keep a low profile.
yeah. Like, no, that's my income. I live, you live kind of like under the radar for a couple years and you peace out somewhere with what, like, I mean, some of the hacks have been in the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah. You only need to get away with that like one time and you're set for life. That's I always like sometimes dream about what if I interacted with a protocol and something went wrong and it just unleashed like $1 billion of ETH into my wallet or something. What would I do? Like, would I do the right thing? I think I would. It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
I felt dirty one time when a cashier accidentally gave me back an extra $5, and I went. I was like, take it.
No. And they don't care
Dirty
either.
fiat money.
Right. Yeah, man. Imagine a couple billion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I don't know enough about Solidity to ever think I'll be in that situation, but it's insane. I think a lot of the talk has been that it might be kind of people are suspicious that a lot of these auditors might be having a hand in it.
That's one of the things I've been wondering, because just coming into the space a little more recently, I'm like, okay, there's these auditors that I'm assuming that these protocols have to actually pay and hire. I'm assuming, is that how it goes? Because I know you guys have been audited recently for your V2.
Yeah, it's you pay them in ETH, and they go through and they pretty much just give you the thumbs up, thumbs down. But
and it's tough too because they don't always catch things either.
It's a very unique position to be in, where you're essentially being like, we're vulnerable in this way. Can you make sure that we're not vulnerable in this way?
Right. Yeah, it goes back to that, this trustless environment that DeFi is trying to create. And here you are trusting, the Farmer Brown equivalent of the insurance auditor company that, you have no idea who they are. They're all anonymous. And, that they know Solidity intimately. What's stopping them from giving them the green light and then going in as soon as they're deployed, doing the back door and, oh, sorry, we messed up that audit. We'll make sure it doesn't happen again. It's the auditors aren't really held accountable at all.
That's true. And they're also looking for different things sometimes too. Like I remember hearing from what project, maybe it was Harvest, maybe it was Cover, but they had just been audited and then they got exploited. And it's like, well, the audit wouldn't have caught the exploit. Well, then what was the purpose of the audit? It's a tough position to be in.
What was the one that just got hacked like a day ago?
Force DAO, is that what you're talking about?
I think when I was reading about that, they were saying that kind of the same thing, that the audit that they had done wouldn't have uncovered the problem they did, or if they had audited it properly, it would have. It
was something to do with like when it was supposed to return a certain call if the person withdrew and didn't have the funds or something, but I guess it didn't return that call. So it allowed the person to withdraw like more of the exports than they should have or something like that. And basically that's how they were able to exploit the Force contract on Force DAO. And yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Like it was something the audit wouldn't have found. And what I was talking about was, I think it was Pickle Finance, actually. Their audit had been taken place, right? And then they introduced this feature called the jar swapping feature. And, because their smart contracts are jars, right? Because they're Pickle Finance. So you have your pickle jars, just like you have the vaults with Yearn and your sets with Badger and so forth. Well, basically, they had added this feature to make it easier to switch your liquidity from one jar to the other if you want to earn a different APY or you just are feeling that jar better. And I guess that they didn't add something to confirm that it was the right jar or the right smart contract, so to speak. So this exploiter basically created a fake jar with code and then basically just told it that was the real jar, and it swapped all of this liquidity into like a fake jar and he ran off with it.
Yep.
So it was bizarre.
I mean, I remember reading into that and I was just thinking, how does this guy figure it out? I mean, it's either someone who is constantly lurking, these platforms with moderate TVL and hoping they mess up, or it's someone either that knows the contracts intimately enough, whether an auditor or on the team, can see it coming. It's unless I don't know enough about Solidity, that's like what I think has to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as prevalent.
I agree completely.
I know. I think it was the hack that occurred between Alpha Hamora and Cream, where they were assuming that was an internal one.
Yeah, that was they call that like their Iron Bank type thing. I think it was technically Yearn was involved as well, but I don't know. I actually don't know how that shaped out. I think Alpha Hamora is still like recovering from it.
They were a great project too before that. I mean, they still are, I'm sure, but I know that anytime you get exploited, it really slows you down quite a bit. I mean, Harvest was like the biggest farm before they had their major exploit. And I think Badger is like pretty much the biggest farm that hasn't been hit yet. But I mean, obviously I'm biased to say that.
Knock on wood. I mean, I swear every single platform, like you mentioned, Pickle, Farm, was it Alpha, Cream, they all end up getting bought out by Yearn too at the end of the day. Like they have this weird kind of, I still haven't looked into it well enough, but Yearn's got this kind of reach on a lot of platforms, especially with Badger. I mean, it might just be like what was it, the accruing the vaults together, putting them in the Yearn vaults to get the curve boost. Is that correct?
Something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but I think Badger's, the only one that hasn't had like an exploit that Yearn's been working with. So it's been interesting to see like that work out. I think Yearn's the most, I'm terrified of them, but they're also just the smartest developers I've ever even, brushed against on crypto Twitter, or however you want to say it.
I think that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of respect for them too, but but I also like have that same, I don't want to, maybe fear, maybe what you want to call it, but it's just like when someone gets so much power and they have so much influence, you're definitely like looking to see what they're going to do next. But I've loved a lot of the stuff that Yearn's been doing. I was curious about what happened with them in cover, and I guess that kind of is where it comes more fear direction, just because I'm curious what happened and I don't know. But just like cover was such a big project, and I remember that everybody was talking about cover like they're the next Yearn. They got a low circulating supply of tokens, just got acquired by Yearn. They got all these projects, DeFi insurance. To me, that's like a critical part of this infrastructure that we're creating is insurance. People being able to insure their investments, that just seems like fundamental to the core of what we're building. So I was a huge believer in them and was invested in them prior to their quadrillion hack exploit. But in addition to that, there was also, Andre and them parted ways, and he made that whole tweet about it. And then all of a sudden, their token value dropped so much. And so I'm thinking, did they do something wrong? Is that why I shouldn't believe them? Or what happened? Like, I just want to know. I'd like to get a little more clarity on that. Are you familiar at all with what apparently happened between them?
I still, to this day, don't know, and I don't think they ever released it, which should be like a huge red flag.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it goes back to the ethos of DeFi is, be your own bank and everything should be transparent. And we're seeing that was most definitely some sort of backdoor deal. I guess in a bad light. I mean, Andre comes out of nowhere, starts shitting on him. And then, next day they go, oh, we parted ways. It's like, okay, like what happened? I don't think they ever released it. I could be wrong.
I'm definitely curious to hear more about it, just because like I've been looking at cover and it's like I've thought about buying it a couple times just because I really think deep into this stuff, and it really I take a really long time before deciding to invest in anything, because the way I see it is I'm putting my ETH at risk, you know, with anything I invest with. So I want to make sure that it's worthwhile. But when you don't know, you just don't know. So it's hard when you have situations that present themselves in DeFi where you can't know. But then there's the other side of that argument, which I think Andre kind of represents, kind of devil's advocate, and it ties into voting too. It's like if you have people vote on everything, then suddenly there's voter fatigue and your project doesn't move forward. But if you don't like empower your community either to make those decisions, well, then you're a centralized entity and you're against the ethos of DeFi. So I kind of get the problem he's frequently placed in for Yearn. And I think that's the number one reason why I'm like, you know, I always kind of look at it from like the glass half full kind of perspective, but it would be nice to have a little bit more transparency there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Andre is such an interesting character too. He has me blocked on Twitter, but I still have like, like I make an alt account on Twitter so I can follow, you know, these crypto guys. Now I have to go on my real Twitter to see what he's posting about, because he practically sets the trend for a lot of DeFi. But I do have a lot of respect for him because he like asks the hard questions. He's like a no frills, no bullshit guy. Like he'll tell you what he's thinking. And he'll just kind of do what he wants. And at the end of the day, the code is the code, you know? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like these, like our reactions to cover, like people dumped their cover because of one tweet. I mean, is that really something we can control? You know, I mean, at that point, is it censorship? Is it, you know, this, that? It's just a really weird, DeFi is such a crazy experiment that I think most of the world population doesn't even have the slightest idea. And, you know, if we end up being right, I think it's going to be like a really cool aspect of our lives that a lot of people, you know, might think it's just sitting around in your underwear and, you know, clicking buttons, getting food tokens and whatnot. But really we're the guinea pigs for what could potentially be the next generation of digital infrastructure, digital agreements.
I would just like to say that I put on pajamas for this interview. So
business casual. See, that's what I love about it. You know, you can show up in your underwear, whatever. But that's something Wall Street would not like to hear.
no.
The amount of money people are making in their underwear.
The thing that you brought up with Yearn, I think that's probably one of the reasons why someone like Satoshi Nakamoto has remained anonymous, because you look at someone like Andre or someone like Elon Musk, and it's like one tweet can completely change the entire market. So like when you have that much power, imagine if he had a Twitter, you know?
Oh my God.
Like imagine if Satoshi Nakamoto had a Twitter and everything he said would basically shape the market in every single way. He could say anything and it would completely change it.
It wouldn't be, I don't even know if we, I don't know what would happen. It'd be horrible.
Yeah. I mean, just like, I mean, how long ago was it that Elon Musk did what he did?
With the Dogecoin?
Yeah, with Doge and with Bitcoin, like when he said that he had invested 1.5 billion with Tesla.
Yeah,
Is he still? Go ahead.
Like investigated by the SEC right now for it too.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna ask, if that was still going on or if they had resolved that yet.
He's probably got like 10 SEC like, you know, investigations going on at all times. I don't know how worried he'll be. But
well, that's kind of where you deal with how much power you can have and what I guess you're able to say on Twitter, which I know that was a big issue of discussion too when Trump got banned from Twitter, and you know there was a lot of debate going about the censorship of free speech and this and that, and there was even some discussion about creating a decentralized social media platform. So essentially, like, you know, people can say what they want and you either follow that channel or you don't. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it always comes back to this idea of the slippery slope, you know. I mean, because at some point you have to draw the line. Like if there's something, there could be like horrific things that get uploaded to, like, let's say, decentralized social media, that, you know, something like someone getting killed, or I don't even know, something horrible that no one, like most people don't like. At what point, you know, who is the responsibility on? And then even if it comes down to like a legal case where, like, you know, someone might be at risk, you know, for like an image posted or something like that, you know, who's responsible? How do we even come to agree what is, you know, appropriate? And then it comes down to this whole globalization effect. You know, in the United States, we have things that are completely fine. You and I wouldn't bat an eye, but you go to China and, you know, even something as simple as like a video game gets censored. So you really can't have a truly decentralized social media, because there's going to be countries that just block access, or parts of the world. So if you block access, you know, yeah, and you can post anything, but there's just going to be a layer of censorship that is unavoidable. So yeah, I don't know. I think like, as much as I don't know how I feel about Twitter. I kind of like it. I kind of don't. It's
I like
addicting as hell.
Facebook.
Yeah. I mean,
That for sure.
yeah, I swear any new like ape project I find out about on Twitter or Telegram or something like that. But yeah, they do censor, and a lot of people agree, disagree. I think it's up to the free market to decide, you know, what social media platform is going to be relevant the next 20, 30 years. I'm guessing the one that finds the balance between, you know, what can we ban and what can we show, you know?
Yeah.
It's absolutely true.
But I'm glad crypto has like stayed away from like Facebook, or I don't even know, like Instagram. That'd be horrible.
Yeah, honestly, like it was discovering crypto Twitter that got me to finally pull the plug on my Facebook accounts. I mean, I've been using them less and less over time, but I still felt myself getting drug into like, you know, debating with people about really stupid, meaningless things, things that don't even like problems that don't exist in crypto land.
Yeah.
And just like realizing that the culture there is very much like, let's bitch about this problem rather than talk about a solution. And of course, that can exist anywhere. You can find that on Twitter. You can find that on any social platform. But what I like about Twitter is I can choose who I follow. I can have control to some degree over what kind of content I'm regularly presented with. And for the most part, the people who I follow on crypto Twitter, the people in this community, they keep it, well, they keep it professional and they keep it fun. You know, it's
Yeah.
not, it's people looking for solutions every day, and that's what I want to be a part of, because we can debate back and forth. We can have different political beliefs or different ethical beliefs, or we could worship a different invisible man in the sky. But at the end of the day, if we just focus on something and what we have in common and what we're trying to do to make something better, then that's the ultimate way to get something done. And I just see that happening on Twitter, whereas that never seemed to happen on Facebook.
Right.
Even just from a business perspective, like, you know, I've been in marketing for a number of years. Even over time, I noticed how worthless and how little value I was getting off my Facebook ad spend compared to like other things.
Yeah, I still do a lot of marketing for people, and I've pretty much completely stopped doing stuff for a lot of social media, because up until recently, I actually didn't have much experience with Twitter. And when it came to Instagram, when it came to Facebook, I was just like, it's really not worth our time doing this. You know, it's like you don't have a good enough plan, and they pretty much will censor everything you do unless you're paying them.
Yeah.
So it just gets to the point. And then Facebook actually kicked me off back, I think, in October. So
For what?
oh man, for everything. Like just the various clients that I have seem to all be controversial to Facebook in some way.
We both started dealing with that because we both advertised for different people, and we both kind of said whatever the hell we wanted at different times on there. So like even when I just got back on after like a month off Facebook to delete my profile just to make it like permanent, download my data, I got a warning the minute I signed in saying that something had pulled up from like 2 years ago that I posted that they were flagging. And it was just something dumb like, like I was promoting violence and it wasn't even like a violent post. It's really stupid. Like just everything they flag
I
nowadays.
remember about a year ago, I think you had shared something with me that like 9 months previously, you had shared a GIF from Facebook's GIF library and had suddenly been hit with a ban for it.
Yeah, I shared their own content and got flagged for it.
Some other stupid shit too.
It just doesn't end. I feel like it's just, especially with Facebook, it's just stupid shit after stupid shit, which, back to the advertising, if you look into like basic attention token, I think they have a really interesting model.
Yes.
It's cool to see that, like, we can sit here and like talk about the problems we have, but someone in crypto is probably addressing it in one way or another.
That's one of the things that I've been trying to tell people about Publish OX as well, is that it's like you get paid for the content as the person reading and the person writing. And they're like, what? How is that? I'm like, well, imagine if you were on Facebook, but as the advertiser creating the content, you were actually being paid for that. And then as the user who's providing value, you're getting paid for that. It's a small amount, but it's like, it's a revolutionary concept in that people are actually being paid for their time and their efforts in that way.
Yeah.
What's this basic attention coin? Farmer Brown, can you speak to that? I haven't heard of that particular one. I'm familiar with Publish OX, and is it similar to being paid for viewing content, or what is that?
Yeah, pretty much it's the Brave token. So they have their own browser. It's practically like a Google Chrome. I guess like I want to say fork, but I feel like that's not relevant here. It's Google Chrome. They use it as like as a base layer, but essentially what they do is they have a built-in ad blocker into the browser, built-in a cookie blocker, just a bunch of privacy things that usually you would give away to Google, but they have it built in. And they also use DuckDuckGo for the like primary search engine. So pretty much, I think how it works, you can essentially just opt in to ads, if that makes sense.
Yep.
They'll be like, hey, like, do you want to see an ad? And you'll earn the token based on that. Or if you go through, different websites where you inadvertently see one, you'll earn the token. And I think at the end of the month, you can claim it. Usually it's not that much, maybe like $20 if you're like really using it a lot, like opting in all that.
I think we've racked up like 0.1 so far. So
yeah, like you really gotta
9 or 10 cents at this point, I think.
Yeah, well, hey, more than you would get.
Exactly. It's more than I've made ever, like working on Chrome. And the thing is, like, it's still hard for me to transition because I've been using Chrome for so long. It's like when I transferred from using Yahoo to using Google as a search engine, and then when I transferred from using Firefox, it's like you're so used to using something that's like kind of forget that there's other options.
Yeah, I'm glad they had the incentive feature with the token. Otherwise, I would have never done it,
Yeah, I heard about Brave quite a while ago, actually, and never knew that it had any kind of value to it in that way, or that it had anything to do with crypto.
Do you have to pay gas to claim your token, I'm assuming, or how does that work?
I think so.
I get you. So you probably only want to do it every once in a while, then I'm guessing. But I mean, you're accumulating rewards just using your browser. That seems like a great idea.
Yeah, and like you can, if you're like a domain holder or I think even social media now, you can like opt in if you like are the owner of the domain to say, yeah, I would like to be able to receive basic attention token donations. So it's kind of like this. The users that accumulate them can either cash out, or they can donate them, or I think there's some subscription services where they're just kind of using that as like the medium of exchange, which is kind of like, it reminds me of like a mobile game where you can earn like the gems or something for doing activities in the game, or you can just buy them outright. But creating like this kind of like freemium ecosystem where normally you just have your data collected from you and monetized off of, and then you'd still have to pay like out of pocket for like Spotify or something, where I think this is kind of like a more nuanced model that might work out. Brave's been around for a while, so I guess it's going well enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give it a try.
Yeah, you should. The biggest headache is just like getting your bookmarks and all that.
Where I haven't really like started doing that because like I said, I haven't really started trying to transition over. It's like I've got a couple things that like automatically link to it and suddenly I'm accruing tokens, but it's a very slow process because I just forget to use it still.
Yeah. Once you go there though, I don't even have Chrome installed anymore.
That's nice. I
Yeah.
know I've had a lot of trouble with Chrome recently with just a lot of stuff, building sites and writing content and stuff. It seems like, and I've seen a lot of articles recently about how bloated it is.
It's insane. I also really like Ocean Protocol. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but
Yeah,
it's
I've
another
actually
kind of like,
the ocean.
yeah, they're also kind of going off this like own your own data. You should be paid for it. Um, just a really like new concept that I think is really going to help crypto go mainstream if it isn't already, beyond Bitcoin, like an actual service.
Yeah.
People still really need to understand the value of their data because it's something that, even me, I'm still way too comfortable giving it away. But you start to notice it, I guess, like maybe it's from being in the pandemic and just being kind of a shut-in, being in front of my computer and doing crypto stuff. But I remember the first time I went to a doctor's office and I had to give them my name, my driver's license, my social security number. And I just remember how difficult and frustrating a process that was. Cause I'm like, why do you need all this information? I mean, I guess I get it, it's a medical thing, but like we've built these systems in place where there's all this bureaucracy and bullshit around these simple processes where it shouldn't exist, to the level that every time you sign a new app, you're supposed to look at like a 20-page privacy doc talking about all these things you're giving away free to this project, and we've become used to it, but we don't realize how valuable that is. One of the cool experiments that was brought up by Supermassive of Defiant News, he had talked about this Facebook experiment, but the idea was this concept he had that I guess he'd pitched it at some company or something at one point. But the idea was if we just gave up our social medias for a weekend, like our Facebook or whatever, and we quantified the value of that data and gave it back to the users in the form of a token, how valuable would that be for one, to show them the value of their data, over that period that they didn't use Facebook? Two, to show them how valuable their time is. I mean, what did they do with their time instead of giving all this data to Facebook? And then it's kind of like three, now that you have this value returned to you with the token, what are you going to do with that value? Would you invest it? What options have now been provided to you because you're not giving something away to a corporation for free? And I thought that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And that's an absolutely huge concept. And it just keeps going back to this idea of, yield farming and using a product. What other examples of real world scenarios where you get a share, maybe not necessarily equity, but something of value for using, a company's product or service? Like I think the only thing I could think of was like Robinhood. They give you like the free stock for the first time, you use it like that. And that's not even, anything to do with Robinhood itself. But yeah, I mean, I think hopefully DeFi will show that there will be sustainable models around, giving control over to your users about what they use, and hopefully it'll work out. I'm like pretty optimistic, but it's gonna happen after, X amount of more rug pulls, exploits, drama. Andre's gonna tweet, at least 10 more horrible things before I'm sure we get to, where we need to be as
Yeah,
far as adoption goes.
I totally agree. And I'm sure we have a few random questions here and there, but since we have been on a bit, I want to make sure that we got to cover everything you wanted to talk about. Were there any other projects other than Dracula, some of the ones we've been talking about, that you wanted to talk about today, or anything else that has you particularly excited about DeFi?
You know, we covered a lot. It's, I could talk about crypto for hours. It's my friends hate me.
I'm getting that more and more. I was at a party about 2 weeks ago and I was just ranting to everyone. And I'm like, I know I sound crazy right now. I'm like, but just listen to me.
Like, please, 1 second. No, no one wants to listen. At least that's what I've gotten.
Yeah.
I think I kind of wanted to think about maybe just between us three, like, how do we see DeFi working out? You see, for example, right now I'm on a lot of Binance Smart Chain projects, and not gonna sugarcoat it. I don't want to be in any of them, for more than like a month at most. But yet you still have people who are believing in DeFi like myself that'll do it purely for profits. And especially with gas fees with Ethereum, I wanted to know what would you guys think 5 years from now? What would the DeFi crypto ecosystem look like? Do you think it'll still be kind of like this yield farming metric? Everyone's anonymous, rug pull, or do you circus, or is this gonna go more towards like a Wall Street route or something weird in between?
I'd like to say, like, I think that the anonymous thing is an interesting thing for me, because I think that one of the most valuable things is, the privacy to do what you want and to act the way you want. But at the same time, I see a lot of negativity to that, because of the fact that when you value privacy to that extent, there's certain things that become, I guess, a negative. Like, possibly, like, if you've got like a weird fetish or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of privacy that, like, there's a negative connotation to it. And yet, would it be better if we were to bring that to the forefront so it's not that weird, and so we don't need to feel like we need privacy surrounding that? Just in the last couple of years, depression has become something that has kind of actually become more of a mainstream topic to really discuss about. But mental health in that way is still a very taboo subject for a lot of people. And yet it would be so valuable if we could openly discuss that without it being a privacy issue, without people feeling like, oh, what are people going to think about this? So it's like, I kind of wonder, is privacy really that good of a thing? Or would it be better if we're able to be open and honest and have real discussions and actually interact with each other on a real level playing field, where we're not worried about stupid crap like that really doesn't matter,
Right.
If we're open-minded and more, intelligent about the way that we view the world and other people, is it really going to matter that we have privacy?
Well, you're talking about potentially opposite ends. I mean, you have the possibility that we become much more open or much more closed. In the much more closed concept, I imagine this going the direction as pretty much everything has in a mostly capitalist type of environment. It condenses down to a few organizations. They become really closed off. It becomes hard to be a new upcoming project because all the attention is drawn to these central entities. And it just kind of becomes that way where, maybe it'll be Andre with Yearn, and he's just, you're either tied into Andre, you're a part of his ecosystem, or you're not, and you're irrelevant. It could be very much something like that, or somebody else. I'm not saying that he'll be the big bad guy who does that. I'm just saying that, it could go that way. Alternatively, you could be looking at an open ecosystem where you have what you have today. You continue to have people coming up with new and innovative concepts. They are continuing to keep open doors where they're talking about what they're working on, because, hey, if we're working on this project, maybe Cover can come in and ensure this smart contract, or maybe we can do something with Harvest that increases our reward metric this way, whatever it might be. I'd like to see the later, where we continue to be open and to have those types of discussions, because in my view, what's happening with COVID, with the emergence of DeFi and like it just exploding to what it is, I feel like there is a change coming to where people are becoming more open and honest with each other. They're looking for products and services that are more transparent. And I would aim to say that the culture we have today, while it may scare some people because of how in your face and you can just see everything that's going on, it may turn some people off because it doesn't look like traditional finance. But I aim to say in 5 to 10 years, it'll look like what people want traditional finance to look like. And that's the future I want to go for, is where we change our perceptions, where we're not saying, let's see what we can do to make DeFi work for the US dollar. When we start shifting the conversation and saying, what can we do to make the US dollar work for DeFi? Let's change the concept. You failed at making this dollar work, so let's show you how to make money work. That's what I want to see in 5 years. And I think an open collective of people being honest with each other will get there faster than people being dishonest and hiding behind corporate walls, keeping trade secrets, so on and so forth.
I think you brought up a good point too, because one of my issues with Bitcoin that I think is still a big issue is its real application and usability. Because right now, and this really does go back to all of DeFi right now, is if you want to use that money, unless you're just investing in other projects or possibly purchasing NFTs or something like that, the vast majority of people are taking it and reconverting it into fiat.
Yeah.
What is the real application of this if all we're doing is really swapping back and forth digital code and then transferring it back into our fiat? Does it really have a true application at that point? And that's one thing that even if we're starting to see that that does have more of an application, especially because we're using it in various ways, what does that have an application for the average person who's not involved yet and we want them to get involved? How do we bridge that gap, and how do we actually fix that problem too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you do it the right way, they're going to be interested. If you do it the wrong way, they're going to be afraid. And if they're afraid, they're going to ask regulators to step in and make it not so scary. But what do you think, Farmer Brown? What's your opinion on the future for this?
I think it's going to ebb and flow. I really think, I don't know where it's going to land, but I can't see this being black and white. I feel like it'll a ton of gray area. There'll be periods like now where everything's chaotic and anonymous and everything's innovating quickly. And then it'll slow down. There might be regulations. People might be getting in trouble for shit they're doing now, rug pulls, as they should, like we saw in ICOs. That kind of slowed down as people's confidence also eroded. But then, DeFi kind of emerged like this new way to like raise funds without having to have SEC or like cross-border regulations. So I think we will see an increase in what's going on now, followed by a sharp decrease, like bear market regulations, and it'll constantly have this kind of ebb and flow where the volatility among each peak will be less and less. So eventually, I think in 5-10 years, we should hit this, happy kind of middle ground where people are confident not using it. There's enough regulations in place, but not too many. And ideally, hopefully, we'll see, the emergence of DeFi and crypto at the same scale as we saw, post.com. Boom, the same level of things got out of hand, people stepped in, and slowly but surely people will kind of have these gateway drugs. Bitcoin is this introduction to crypto, which then who knows, maybe Badger is the introduction to DeFi, which, leads to this kind of, these gray areas of kind of dipping into the pool, seeing if the water's warm, and then eventually reaching a point where something like Amazon is now everyone knows about it. Even, people in their 80s and 90s can order, I don't even know, deodorant to their house. Like, that same level of abstractness, if you would have said that 20 years ago, no one would have believed it. And there would have been so many concerns, where I think it's just gonna be really slowly and a lot of ebb and flow. And hopefully we'll reach a middle ground where everyone will be, at least using it in some way and contributing. But right now, yeah, I think we're kind of in a crazy period. The bull market's heating up. There's scams, rug pulls, innovations. I mean, we're the guinea pigs. and we're taking on a lot of risk. And, I think it'll be rewarded if everyone plays their cards right. But also not walking away, not kind of forgetting, why are we here? Is it just to make money to throw back into fiat, or is it to kind of, hey, like, I'm going to buy in, I'm going to, kind of align these values, I'm going to collect in ether, or I'm, only going to take out enough to pay my bills. I'm not going to, there's going to be little individual decisions that we all make. And hopefully that'll change with layer 2, the emergence of it. But, we're just all beta testers at the end of the day. And I think we're contributing to something, genuinely great. And it goes back to the beginning of this, someone like Sergey Nazarov. I mean, if you look into what he does, he's really a great role model, as well as, other leaders in the crypto industry that, like, there's going to be times of great volatility, but you have to understand what we're doing here is more than just food tokens and cashing out. Like, this could legitimately change the world. And if we all don't buy into that concept, it won't,
Yeah.
So it takes us, like, even people like us three, we could really change how this is perceived. And, something like this podcast, even just like kind of breaking down those information barriers, that asymmetry can eventually lead to, this greater good of, hey, blockchain, crypto, not all about food tokens, something good is happening here.
Absolutely. I agree completely.
What do you think would be like the worst case scenario for how things develop? What would absolutely like crush you 5 or 10 years from now if you spent this time in this space and I guess this outcome occurred?
Man, I I haven't thought of that.
Because just like part of our conversation that's happened, I'm like, it brings back to like the unperceived consequences of the possible good actions that we're trying to take. Like, what's the big huge negative? Kind of like with what Amazon has become. Everyone loved the idea of being able to get stuff online, and now we have this evil monstrous behemoth that treats everyone like crap. And yet it's so easy to use, it's so valuable, but it's a destructive force.
Right. Yeah. My knee-jerk reaction would be like, yeah, regulation steps in and shuts, the entire crypto space down. But that, one, I don't think it'll happen. And two, crypto would find a way. Like, I don't think it could happen. But I think the worst case scenario would be that, you're right, this does become a huge success, global infrastructure, everyone's using it, and this transparency and kind of like interconnectivity of everything you do is publicly accessible. No one can edit it, but it is used to, oppress rather than encourage basic human life. I mean, I don't see how anyone could control this, but something down, you hear a lot of concern around vaccinations or something. Like, people who don't get vaccinations will have this kind of second class citizen mark on them. And there's tons of discussion on, what if you did know, no matter where you went, that it was publicly, transparently, immutably accessible that you did not get this vaccination, or you voted for this person, or you are this number and this is what you've done. And I think the worst case would be that it abstracts away humanity. It kind of creates us back to this, another cog in the wheel. We're just a number, and could be easily controlled by that. So that's just a really negative view, but it's not completely out of the question. I mean, how long has humanity existed without, horribleness in the world? Zero.
Yeah.
Like,
I view myself as like an extreme optimist, utopian type person. And yet I know that there's so much in the way of that. I mean, realistically, for any of that kind of stuff to happen, if we were going to have a utopia, we would all have to collectively agree on like basically all of our underlying core values. And we would have to understand something so deep collectively like an ant colony. And we're not at the point, we're not at the intelligence level of ants yet, apparently.
Well, I think part of it too is to try to do what we can to support emerging technology, because that's kind of the other side of it too, you know, and trying to keep it positive as much as possible. But it's like when these new projects come out and you get in the discords, especially like for airdrops, so on and so forth, you kind of see the culture that's created a lot of the problems that we have in the monetary system, which, you know, comes back to incentives. Um, but really, like, if we can't support positively projects that are trying to solve these problems, and we can't deal with them not being perfect in the interim, like, whoa, why isn't it like this doesn't look like a checking account. If we can't get over those hurdles in the interim, I see that as being the biggest threat to this ecosystem. We have to get a little bit comfortable with, granted, you know, doing our own research, reading the white papers, exploring the website, talking to knowledgeable people in the industry. I mean, all that's important before using a protocol. But like, I had this issue just using MCO card, right? So it's with crypto.com, I got an MCO card and I thought, well, this would be a really good way for me to load up some Ethereum on the card. And whenever I need to have an everyday expense, instead of me having to transfer the money to Coinbase and withdraw it to my checking account, and there's this 3-day waiting period, this is something I can do on the fly to start using the card. Well, of course, when you first get the card, it's not like a regular preloaded card. They're wanting to flag all your transactions. If you get flagged and your card can't be used, you have to go through this chat channel on the app that takes a couple days for someone to get a hold of you and turn your card back on. Don't get me wrong, it's frustrating and it's irritating the first days that I started using that card. But I pushed through it because I realized, I said, hey, if I can keep supporting them, it's only going to get better. And as far as I'm aware, there's no one else doing this better than them right now. Like, I didn't lose my money. They'll reactivate the card. I'll be able to access the funds and make my purchase. I just have to get used to the limitations of this card with the current technology. And that's the same thing with anything. I mean, I remember when Badger launched, and people were in the Discord complaining about the UI and complaining about this and that. And then there were other people like VFAT tools who are finding solutions so that people would feel more comfortable making their deposit. You know, there are people in the Discords trying to answer people's questions, not because they were hired by Badger, but because they understood something and they wanted to educate people who were lost so that they could support the project. That's just, to me, such a beautiful thing. And that's something I've never seen anywhere, like with any industry. And if we can just maintain that same optimism, you know, cautious optimism, don't get me wrong, I'm very much a cautious optimist myself, but if we could maintain that, I think we can build some beautiful things.
Yeah, and I think that you know, one of my first interactions was once I was on Discord and once I was on Telegram. It was very cool because when I ran into a problem, I was trying to invest in multi-chain ventures and I was having a lot of trouble with it. And the first person who reached out to me to give me a step-by-step process was their CEO and the founder. And I was just like, he worked with me step by step on Telegram of how to go through the entire process. And I thought that was so cool because, like, can you imagine trying to get a hold of like a politician or getting a hold of a CEO or even someone mildly high ranking to help walk you through a complex process that you don't understand?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
little things like that that are really, really unique about this space and that I would hate to see get lost. Because one thing that's great about Discord is, and Twitter is, I feel like a lot of the important people are right at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're willing to talk to you and to help you, and you find out really quickly what an ecosystem it really is, how tied together everyone is, and they're working together. It's just a beautiful thing.
And yeah, that's what's kept me in crypto. I think that's going to keep me in crypto. And I'm really excited as, my constituents ask me about it, or you just kind of see it and say, yeah, like, it's kind of like a horrible, scummy place if you don't know what you're doing, but there are these silver linings, and you get in these projects that care, and you realize that the stigma around crypto, as you know it, isn't true. Like most stigma, there's more than meets the eye. And although like, the base thing that I think gets people interested is this, oh, you'll make money. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's keeping this kind of like welcoming, I guess, atmosphere as much as you can. And I've been really impressed that everyone's been able to do it, through these anonymous profiles, especially us three coming together, just shooting the shit. And anything like intolerable, like racism, whatever, usually gets shut down pretty quick, like in a Telegram. So
Yeah.
I think we're on a good trajectory. It's just, keeping it, understanding like, hey, we're a lot of these things you might be doing for greed, like understand at least that aspect. And I guess, realize what a fortunate position we're all in to be able to, even be this early to something. And, have the money, disposable income state in our lives where, we can sit down and interact with it. So it's been really awesome. Yeah, I've definitely loved working in it and hope to keep doing it.
I had one more question for you real quick. On your Twitter, I do see that you have involvement with Badger, I'm guessing. Either that or you just are a huge fan.
I think it's more of just the huge fan. I think just what's really impressed me, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, Fry, but it really does go down to the governance. I mean, just the way they've kept the community involved, and just had like this impressive like level of interacting with their community, giving them a voice in some key proposals that could have gone under the radar, could not have, but really kind of adhering to this mentality of what a DAO is, giving people a voice, and being methodical, not rushing things, and just overall being a good model for something like Dracula to follow. Like, how do we incentivize people to care about our project? How do we make this sustainable? And I think Badger's really like led a path for us to follow. So definitely been keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see continuing to bring Bitcoin to DeFi. There's definitely an opportunity there too to educate people who come from just the school of thought that maybe they just know about Bitcoin, but what's the next step? Earning interest on your Bitcoin. How? Through DeFi. Then they got to learn about Ethereum. There's a huge opportunity we have to educate people who are going to be getting more involved in the DeFi community, and I'm definitely excited to be a part of that. And I'm proud of what Badger's done as far as governance too, and keeping community members involved in making it what it is. I think it's pretty fascinating.
I think that was you who was tweeting at Elon Musk every day, right?
Oh shit, I forgot today. That's also what happens. I'll get someone that'll tweet at me like, hey, by the way, like, did you tweet at Elon today? I go, man, I didn't.
Stop that. You got to do it for 5,000 days. Then you can just sell the thing as a collage.
Oh my God, dude. Could you imagine? I just hope Elon just likes one of them so I can stop. That's all that I'm it's such an obligation. I feel like I have like a third, fourth job at this point. Yeah. So I love Badger, and I'm definitely keeping an eye on it.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you, kind of irrelevant, and then we can go ahead and wrap. So can you tell us a little bit about real life Farmer Brown? Do you smoke a roll, or what do? You a frog? What's life like?
Most people would say that they wouldn't have the slightest idea that like I'm in crypto. And like especially how deep that I tell them I am. I mean, I'd like to consider myself pretty deep. And that's not like a compliment to myself either. It's kind of concerning. But yeah, especially during COVID, I've seen like this, I'm sure we all have our own personal changes, whether for the better or worse. So I've definitely had more time to like focus, I guess, on my career. Sometimes it's like most of the time I'll spend in crypto if I'm not doing classes. Weekends, I'll definitely smoke a joint, meet up with friends, get a drink, you know, try to live life outside the virtual world. But it's definitely finding a balance and trying to connect with as many people as I can, but, you know, not like obnoxiously where, you know, I'm trying to strike up a conversation with everyone that walks by me. So,
Yeah.
I
yeah,
get you. Are you on Clubhouse at all? I ask because they have this group on there called, I just started joining it, but it's called NFT Smoke Sesh. But it's kind of neat because they just get on there and they get stoned, and sometimes people get lost in thought. You know, this guy was on there talking about lassoing an asteroid, but it's really interesting, like in-depth topics, like, you know, and they'll talk about anything from, you know, like minerals, space to NFTs. People will come in, show their NFT ideas, and everybody's stoned and like smoking joints and stuff during the meeting. It's really cool. You should check it out if you're on Clubhouse.
You know, I think you just gave me a reason to get on Clubhouse. I think sounds great. Honestly, I mean, that sounds incredible, especially just to, you know, meet other crypto weirdos, especially while stoned. Could be interesting.
Yeah, I'll get you linked to it.
Yeah, please do. I got to figure out how to set that up too. But
yeah, I'll help you with it. Do you have an iPhone?
yeah.
Okay, then I'll get you an invite. I'll get you on there. Yeah, you don't have one, right?
Nope.
Yeah, I got to get you one just so we can get on there and start bringing our channel there too.
Yeah, if anyone feels like sending me an iPhone, I will put my Ethereum address in the comments.
Oh man, yeah, it would be good content, but yeah, that was the other concern. I don't want to dox myself by signing up, so I gotta be careful.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll we'll chat and I'll see if I can help you offline. But other than that, was do you want to leave like your details for people to contact you or anything you want to wrap with?
Yeah, just tweet at me, message me at Farmer Brown DeFi. I'm slightly offensive, so sorry if I tweet something that isn't your cup of tea, but yeah, I'm definitely like I will answer most yield farming questions as long as they're, you know, not like pulling teeth. Like, you know, why isn't my MetaMask working? So feel free to use me as a resource though. And, you know, anything involving crypto yield farming, my DMs are open. So I'd love to meet, you know, new people in the crypto space and, you know, also smoke a joint with them. So maybe I'll see you on Clubhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good, man.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Yes. Next time, maybe we'll bring joints.
Yes, I'd be down.
I've got a good amount of hash, so.
Oh man, you'll be transcending. I don't even know if we can. It's always a balance. You can't get too high, otherwise I can't even like talk crypto.
Yeah, like Wi-Fi, man.
Yes. Yeah. But all right, guys. Thanks again.
Awesome.
All right.
Take care.
Yep. You as well.